Imagine the moment the seal of an ancient royal tomb is broken for the first time in thousands of years. The air shifts, thick with dust and mystery, and as torchlight spills into the darkness, it illuminates treasures beyond imagination: gold, jewels, and artifacts that speak of a world long vanished. But among these expected wonders, there are objects that simply don't belong. Items so strange, so technologically perplexing, that they defy every classification system we have. These aren't just ancient relics, they're enigmas wrapped in time, waiting to unravel everything we thought we knew about history. From the sun-scorched valleys of Egypt to the silent, emperor-guarded crypts of China, royal tombs have always served as time capsules, preserving not just rulers, but the very essence of their civilizations. Yet within these sacred spaces, archaeologists have again and again stumbled upon artifacts that challenge our understanding of ancient innovation, spirituality, and connection. These mysterious objects, some appearing almost otherworldly, push the boundaries between ritual and technology, between what we believe was possible and what actually was. In this video, we're going to explore 20 of the most baffling object types ever discovered in royal tombs across the globe, finds that continue to stump experts and ignite the imagination of everyone who encounters them. These artifacts are more than mere curiosities. They are potential keys to lost knowledge, fragments of advanced understanding that may have been deliberately hidden or simply forgotten over the ages. So join us on this journey into the unknown, where every discovery invites more questions than answers, and where the past feels thrillingly, mysteriously alive. Think about the sheer intention behind these burial sites. Royal tombs weren't just holes in the ground. They were monumental feats of engineering and profound statements of belief, constructed to stand for eternity. The ancient Egyptians, for instance, built the pyramids not merely as grand graves but as vehicles for the pharaoh's soul to ascend to the stars, equipped with everything needed for the journey: food, furniture, even entire boats. Similarly, in China, the first emperor Qin Shi Huang was buried with a terracotta army, a subterranean military force intended to protect him in the afterlife. Each item placed alongside a ruler, from the most humble pottery bowl to the most exquisite golden mask, was chosen with deliberate purpose. It was a carefully curated collection meant to reflect their power, provide for their needs, and honor the gods in the world to come. This is why these spaces are such incredible time capsules. They freeze a moment of supreme cultural importance, sealing away the pinnacle of a civilization's art, technology, and spiritual practice. Yet within these meticulously prepared chambers, we keep finding things that just don't belong. Imagine an archaeologist carefully brushing dust away from a trove of expected grave goods, a beautiful dagger here, a ceremonial headdress there, and then their tool hits something completely unfamiliar. It might be made of a strange material, shaped in a way that doesn't correspond to any known tool or symbol, or it might possess a level of craftsmanship that seems to belong to a different era entirely. These are the objects that truly captivate us. They are the outliers, the anomalies that disrupt the neat narrative we've constructed about the past. In the Valley of the Kings, beyond the sarcophagi and canopic jars, there are items whose use we can only guess at. Over in China's Mawangdui tombs, the Han Dynasty elite were buried with lacquerware and silks of unbelievable quality, but also with mysterious manuscripts and maps that hint at knowledge we thought was developed centuries later. The presence of these unclassifiable artifacts suggests that our historical timeline might be incomplete, or that we have fundamentally misunderstood the capabilities and connections of ancient societies. Perhaps a technology was discovered and then lost, its only evidence buried with a king. Maybe a unique cultural practice faded away without a written record, leaving behind only its strange physical remnants. Every time we uncover one of these mysterious objects, it's a humbling reminder that history isn't a solved puzzle. It's a dynamic, living field of study where a single discovery can challenge decades of academic consensus. This context is everything. It transforms these oddities from mere curiosities into profound puzzles, making the ongoing search within these ancient tombs one of the most exciting detective stories in the world. So what does it actually mean when experts say an object defies classification? It's more than just not knowing its name. It's a fundamental challenge to our entire system of understanding the past. Archaeology, at its heart, is a science of comparison. When a new artifact is unearthed, the first thing researchers do is look for parallels. They examine its material. Is it a common local stone or a rare imported metal? They study its design. Does it match the artistic styles of the era? They theorize its function. Does it show wear patterns consistent with a tool, or is it pristine like a ceremonial offering? And crucially, they place it within its cultural context. What do we know about the people who made it and their beliefs? An object fits neatly into history when it has clear answers to these questions. But the artifacts we're discussing are the ultimate outliers. They are the black swans of the archaeological record. They possess no clear cousins in any museum or dig site around the world. Imagine a librarian trying to shelve a book written in a language that doesn't exist, with a binding made of an unknown material. That's the daily frustration and thrill an archaeologist faces with these items. This isn't a simple lack of information. It's a complete absence of a category to put the thing in. It simply doesn't compute with our current database of human history. These objects often scream their mystery through several telltale signs. Some are crafted from materials that, according to our timeline, shouldn't have been available or workable with the technology of the age. Others display a level of precision or complexity in their craftsmanship that seems to leapfrog centuries of gradual technological progress, appearing almost anachronistic, as if they were dropped into the past from the future. Their designs can be utterly unique, bearing no resemblance to the artistic or symbolic language of the culture they were buried with. This radical departure from the norm forces us to consider wild possibilities. Could they be evidence of a localized technology that was invented and then lost before it could spread? Might they be the result of unprecedented cultural exchange with a distant, perhaps even unknown, civilization? Or are we, as modern observers, completely misinterpreting their purpose because we've lost the cultural rulebook needed to read them? This struggle is where rigid science meets boundless speculation. For every scholar diligently cataloging measurements and conducting material analysis, there's a theorist proposing these objects as proof of advanced ancient knowledge or even outside influence. This tension is not a weakness, it's the very engine of discovery. The enigma of classification forces us to admit the gaps in our knowledge, humbling our assumptions and opening the door to rewriting chapters of history we thought were complete. It's a powerful reminder that the past is not a static, solved puzzle but a dynamic, living mystery, and each unclassifiable object is a piece that doesn't just not fit. It suggests the picture on the box might be wrong altogether. Now, let's turn our attention to one of the most iconic and debated enigmatic finds, the crystal skulls. These mesmerizing objects have captured the public imagination like few other artifacts, often appearing in popular culture as vessels of mystical power or otherworldly knowledge. Originally linked to Mesoamerican royal tombs, particularly those of the Maya and Aztec elite, these skulls are carved with astonishing precision from single, massive blocks of natural quartz crystal, either perfectly clear or with a faint, milky haze. The sheer technical achievement of their creation is what first gives experts pause. Quartz crystal is one of the hardest materials on Earth, rating a 7 on the Mohs scale of mineral hardness. To sculpt something this complex from such a stubborn substance using only ancient hand tools should have been a near impossible task, likely resulting in shattered pieces, or at least leaving behind obvious chisel marks and abrasions. Yet, the most famous specimens, like the Mitchell-Hedges skull discovered in the 1920s, display a level of perfection that seems to defy this logic. Their surfaces are flawlessly smooth, their features symmetrical and incredibly detailed, with no visible evidence of the metal or stone tools that would have been available to pre-Columbian cultures. This has led to a whirlwind of theories attempting to explain their origin. Some propose the existence of a lost, advanced technology, perhaps a method using specialized abrasives or even some form of sonic machining that has been lost to history. Others, looking at the skull's perfect geometry and optical properties, have ventured into more speculative territory, suggesting they could be evidence of contact with a more technologically advanced culture. The mystery only deepens when we consider their potential purpose. If they are genuine ancient artifacts, what role did they play? One compelling theory is that they were powerful religious objects. In Mesoamerican cosmology, the skull was a potent symbol of renewal and the cycle of life and death, not just an emblem of mortality. A crystal skull, therefore, could have been a representation of a deity or a revered ancestor, used by high priests in ceremonies to communicate with the spirit world. The crystal itself might have been chosen for its believed properties. Many cultures attribute the ability to focus energy or enhance psychic abilities to quartz. Perhaps they were used as aids in healing rituals or as devices for divination, with priests gazing into their depths to foresee the future. Another fascinating angle is their potential use in astronomy. The Mitchell-Hedges skull, for instance, has a removable mandible or lower jaw, and is designed in such a way that light can be channeled through its cranium. Some researchers have suggested it could have acted as a primitive lens or a kind of projector, perhaps used to track celestial events or to cast specific patterns of light during rituals aligned with the solstices or equinoxes. This blends the line between ritual object and sophisticated technological instrument, a theme we will see again and again. Of course, the plot thickens considerably with the fact that many crystal skulls in museum collections have been definitively exposed as modern hoaxes, expertly carved in the 19th century with industrial-era jewelers' tools. This has cast a long shadow of doubt over all of them. However, a small number, including the Mitchell-Hedges skull, continue to resist conclusive dating and analysis, their origins shrouded in enough genuine uncertainty to keep the debate fiercely alive. They stand as the perfect embodiment of this entire exploration, beautiful, perplexing, and forever balancing on the razor's edge between ancient art and unexplained technology. While the crystal skulls spark debates over spiritual meaning and lost craftsmanship, our next mystery shifts the focus from the symbolic to the spectacularly scientific, even if it wasn't found in a tomb. In the early days of the 20th century, sponge divers exploring a Roman-era shipwreck off the coast of the Greek island of Antikythera stumbled upon a corroded lump of bronze and wood that seemed entirely out of place among the statues and amphorae. Initially overlooked, this unassuming lump would later be recognized as one of the most significant archaeological discoveries of all time, the Antikythera Mechanism. After decades of painstaking research, including advanced X-ray and CT scanning, scientists have been able to peer inside its calcified shell to reveal a breathtakingly complex system of interlocking bronze gears, precisely calibrated dials, and intricate inscriptions. This wasn't a mere ornament or a simple tool. It was an intricate mechanical computer, a device of such genius that its complexity would not be matched again until the astronomical clocks of medieval Europe over 1,000 years later. The purpose of this ancient marvel was nothing short of extraordinary. By turning a hand crank on its side, the user could activate a miniature cosmos of moving parts. Its dials and pointers could predict the positions of the sun and the moon, track the phases of our lunar companion, and even forecast solar and lunar eclipses with remarkable accuracy. But its functions didn't stop at the heavens. One of its dials was dedicated to tracking the 4-year cycle of the ancient Olympic Games and other major athletic festivals, turning it into a sophisticated calendar of both celestial and cultural events. The mechanism even accounted for the subtle wobble in the moon's orbit, a complex motion known as lunar anomaly, proving its designers possessed a deep and sophisticated understanding of astronomical mathematics. It was, in essence, a portable, hand-powered planetarium, a device that could model the universe and its cycles with a precision that would make any ancient philosopher gasp. This single device single-handedly shatters our comfortable timeline of technological progress. We often imagine a steady, upward climb of innovation, but the Antikythera Mechanism is a stunning outlier, a peak of engineering that appears suddenly and then vanishes from the historical record for centuries. Its existence forces us to ask profoundly difficult questions. Where did this knowledge come from? Historical texts mention similar devices. The great inventor Archimedes was said to have built a planetarium, and Cicero wrote of a machine that could replicate the motions of the sun, moon, and planets. This suggests the Antikythera Mechanism was not necessarily a one-off miracle, but perhaps part of a larger tradition of Greek mechanical wonder-making, a school of technology known as sophisticated machinery. The fact that this particular device was found on a luxury ship bound for Rome implies it was a valuable object, possibly a diplomatic gift or the prized possession of a wealthy Roman collector. This opens up a tantalizing possibility. If such a device was considered a treasure worth transporting across the Mediterranean, could other, perhaps even more advanced, mechanisms have been entombed with powerful rulers as ultimate symbols of their wisdom and command over the cosmos? The mechanism's very existence suggests a level of scientific knowledge that was likely reserved for a small, elite class of thinkers and patrons. Its inscriptions are a detailed user manual of sorts, written for someone who was already deeply versed in astronomical theory. This wasn't a toy for the masses, it was a tool for demonstration, education, and perhaps even astrological calculation, meant for the hands of a philosopher, a wealthy noble, or even a king. Its loss to history for 2 millennia hints at a darker possibility, that this branch of advanced technology was somehow suppressed or simply lost amidst the chaos of the Roman Empire's decline, its secrets sinking to the bottom of the sea, waiting to be rediscovered. The Antikythera Mechanism doesn't just challenge our assumptions about ancient technology. It boldly suggests that the ancient world was far more mechanically brilliant than we ever dared to dream, and that we have likely only recovered a fraction of their most astonishing creations. While the Antikythera Mechanism reveals an ancient world capable of breathtaking mechanical computation, our next discovery suggests they might have been tinkering with forces even more fundamental to our modern world, electricity itself. The so-called Baghdad Battery is a perfect example of how a seemingly humble object can upend our assumptions and spark debates that rage for decades. It was uncovered in the 1930s during excavations at a 2,000-year-old Parthian-era site just outside Baghdad, a region that was once a vibrant crossroads of empires. The object itself is deceptively simple, a small, 5-inch tall clay jar within which sits a rolled copper cylinder and inside that an iron rod. The jar showed signs of being sealed with asphalt or bitumen, which acted as a stopper, also insulating the two metals from each other. To an untrained eye, it could easily be mistaken for a mundane storage container for scrolls or precious herbs, but its unique construction immediately caught the attention of the excavators. The mystery ignited when a German archaeologist named Wilhelm Koenig studied the odd jar and proposed a radical theory. He suggested that if this vessel were filled with an acidic liquid, something commonly available like vinegar or fermented grape juice, it would function as a basic galvanic cell. The acidic solution would act as an electrolyte, allowing a chemical reaction to occur between the dissimilar metals. The iron rod would corrode, releasing electrons that would flow to the copper cylinder, generating a small but measurable electric potential. In essence, he argued, this was an ancient battery. Experiments with replicas have proven that this setup does indeed work, producing a low voltage current, somewhere around 1 volt, which is roughly equivalent to the power of a modern watch battery. This is where the speculation truly takes flight. If this was an intentional battery, what on earth could it have been used for 2 millennia ago? One of the most popular and practical theories points to electroplating. The art of gilding or silvering less precious objects was known in the ancient world, but the methods were typically mechanical, involving hammering thin sheets of metal onto a surface. A weak electric current, however, could be used for electroplating, a process where gold or silver particles suspended in a solution are drawn onto and bonded with a metal object submerged in it. This creates a much finer, more durable and seamless coating. Some have pointed to fine examples of gilded jewelry from the region, wondering if this subtle technology was their secret. Another compelling idea is its use in medicine. Ancient Greek and Roman texts describe the use of electric fish to deliver numbing shocks to relieve pain. Perhaps a consistent, low-level current from such a battery could have been applied for acupuncture like pain relief or other therapeutic purposes, seen as a form of magic or divine healing. However, not everyone is convinced by the battery hypothesis. Skeptics offer compelling counterarguments. For one, no wires or conductors have ever been found with these objects to complete a circuit. Furthermore, the asphalt seal, which is central to the battery theory, could have a much simpler explanation. It was just a very effective sealant to protect whatever was inside the jar, perhaps a precious papyrus scroll or a religious text from moisture. The copper and iron might have simply been the protective casing and a handy rod to roll the scroll around. Other scholars suggest a religious function. The vessel may have held a sacred substance, and the unique metals could have held symbolic significance, their interaction seen as a mystical or divine phenomenon within a temple context. The biggest stumbling block is the lack of any other clear evidence. Only a handful of these objects have ever been found, and none were discovered with any apparatus attached that would confirm their use as a power source. This is the core of the enigma. The Baghdad Battery exists in a frustrating archaeological limbo. It can function as a battery, but we lack the definitive proof that it ever was used as one. It represents a tantalizing what-if scenario that forces us to confront our own preconceptions about the linear progression of discovery. We often operate on the assumption that major technological breakthroughs like the harnessing of electricity, happened in a specific order at a specific time in history. But what if the spark of an idea was discovered, experimented with, and then lost or applied in such a limited, niche way that it left almost no trace in the archaeological record? The Baghdad Battery stands as a powerful symbol of that possibility, a quiet, unassuming clay pot that challenges us to wonder if ancient innovators were playing with the very building blocks of the modern world, their full understanding now silent and buried with them. Moving from the potential electrochemical experiments of the Baghdad Battery, we journey to the high desert plateaus of Peru, where an entirely different kind of mystery is etched into the very earth itself. The vast, enigmatic Nazca Lines are world-famous, these gigantic geoglyphs depicting spiders, monkeys, and hummingbirds, so large they can only be fully appreciated from the sky. But the true depth of the mystery isn't just in the lines we can see from above. It's in the strange and unclassifiable objects found buried with the Nazca elite in nearby tombs. These artifacts suggest that creating these massive earth drawings was about far more than just moving rocks. It was a complex ritual process, possibly guided by tools and instruments whose purpose we can only guess at. Among the most perplexing of these tomb finds are unique wooden devices. These aren't simple sticks or digging tools. They are carefully carved objects, often featuring intricate notches, protrusions, and geometric patterns. To a modern eye, some of them bear a striking resemblance to rudimentary astrolabes, theodolites, or other surveying instruments. The immediate, logical assumption is that these must have been the tools used to plot out the massive, perfectly proportioned geoglyphs on the desert floor. The Nazca people, without the benefit of flight or modern mathematics, somehow engineered these precise, enormous figures. It stands to reason they would have needed sophisticated measuring tools to maintain scale and perspective over such vast distances. Perhaps these carved devices were part of a complex system of ropes and stakes, a physical algorithm for turning a spiritual vision into a landscape-sized masterpiece. However, this practical explanation quickly runs into problems. For one, many of these objects show no signs of the wear and tear you would expect from heavy fieldwork. They are often found in pristine condition, placed alongside fine textiles and pottery in the tombs of high-status individuals. This suggests they were items of great value and significance, not just common tools for laborers. This is where the mystery truly deepens. What if their function was not purely practical but profoundly spiritual? The Nazca culture was deeply entwined with astronomy and cosmology. Their world was alive with gods and celestial forces. These peculiar objects might not have been surveyors' tools, but rather ritual implements, devices used by priests or shamans to map the cosmos or communicate with deities. Imagine a ceremony where a shaman uses one of these carved devices not to measure the earth, but to align with a specific star or the path of the sun. The notches and angles could have served as a calendar or a model of the heavens, used to determine the optimal times for rituals, planting, or creating new geoglyphs. The act of making the lines themselves could have been a form of walking meditation or a prayer made physical, with these objects serving as sacred guides for the process. They might have been believed to harness spiritual energy, to focus the intention of the community, or to serve as a conduit between the earthly realm and the world of the gods. The intricate carvings could then be a symbolic language, a code representing mythological stories or cosmic principles that we no longer understand. This blend of the practical and the spiritual is what makes these objects so impossible to neatly classify. They exist in a space between advanced engineering and profound faith. They hint at a society that saw no separation between science and religion, where understanding the stars and pleasing the gods were two parts of the same goal. The presence of these items in elite burials tells us they were among the most valued possessions of the culture's leaders, perhaps symbolizing their unique ability to navigate both the physical and spiritual landscapes. The Nazca left us no written records to decode their purpose. We are left with only these silent, enigmatic objects and the giant drawings they may have helped create. They are a haunting reminder that a tool can be so much more than its function. It can be a key to an entire worldview, a worldview we are still desperately trying to comprehend. Leaving behind the vast desert canvases of the Nazca, we travel now to the opulent tombs of China's Han Dynasty, where a different kind of magic was being crafted from metal. Here, among the jade suits and intricate lacquerware, archaeologists have uncovered bronze mirrors of such bewildering sophistication that they seem to defy the very laws of physics. These are not the simple, slightly cloudy reflective surfaces you might expect from ancient times. These mirrors, known as light penetration mirrors or Tu Guangjing, hold a secret that continues to mystify metallurgists and historians to this day. When bright sunlight strikes their highly polished face, something incredible happens. The light doesn't just reflect back as a beam. It projects a perfect image of the intricate pattern cast on the mirror's back, be it a constellation of stars, a mythical beast, or an inscription of blessings onto a nearby wall or screen. It's as if the solid bronze becomes momentarily transparent, allowing the hidden design to shine through. This stunning optical illusion, achieved over 2,000 years ago with no understanding of modern physics, feels less like a reflection and more like a form of ancient projection. The manufacturing process behind these mirrors is a lost art that modern science has struggled to perfectly replicate. They were cast from a special high-tin bronze alloy, which is significantly more brittle and difficult to work with than standard bronze. After casting, the front of the mirror was meticulously ground and polished to a flawless, shimmering reflective surface. The real genius, however, lies in the subtle manipulation of the mirror's thickness on its reverse side. The areas with the raised design were made slightly thicker, while the plain background areas were scraped and filed down to be ever so slightly thinner. This created infinitesimal variations in the metal's density. The final, crucial step was a mysterious stress-relieving process, likely involving careful heating and cooling, that caused these thin and thick sections to expand and contract at different rates. The result was that the pattern on the back imposed itself through microscopic warping onto the surface of the mirror. These distortions are completely invisible to the naked eye. The front looks perfectly smooth and flat. But when a focused beam of light hits it, these tiny variations cause the light to scatter and reflect in just the right way to project the hidden image. It is a masterpiece of metallurgical engineering, a perfect marriage of art, craft, and unknowing applied science. But why go to such extraordinary lengths? What was the purpose of creating a mirror that could perform this magical trick? The most compelling theories place these objects firmly within the realm of Han Dynasty spirituality and cosmology. This was an era deeply influenced by Taoist and folk beliefs, a world alive with spirits, omens, and a desire to harness cosmic energies. One powerful idea is that these mirrors were far more than vanity items. They were ritual tools for divination and communication with the unseen world. A priest or shaman could use the mirror to literally bring to light hidden messages from the spirit realm. The projected pattern might be interpreted as an omen or an answer to a burning question. In a dark chamber with a single beam of sunlight or candlelight focused upon it, the sudden appearance of a dragon or a constellation on the wall would have been a breathtaking, awe-inspiring event, solidifying the power and connection of the ritual's practitioner. Another theory suggests they were sophisticated talismans, designed to protect the deceased on their journey to the afterlife. Buried with the elite, these mirrors could have been intended to use the light of the sun or the moon to project protective symbols, creating a sacred, hallowed space around the tomb and warding off malevolent spirits. The very act of penetrating light could have been seen as a metaphor for penetrating the veil between the world of the living and the world of the dead. Their function might have also been philosophical, serving as a physical representation of core Taoist principles, the idea that reality is not what it seems on the surface, and that hidden truths and patterns underlie all of existence. The mirror, with its plain front and magically revealed back, was a perfect symbol of this duality. The fact that no contemporary hand texts explicitly detail their manufacture or ritual use only deepens the mystery. It implies this knowledge may have been a closely guarded secret, passed down through guilds of master craftsmen who were also initiates into spiritual mysteries. These mirrors stand as a testament to a culture that saw no divide between the scientific and the sacred, where manipulating metal could be a direct path to touching the divine. From the mystical light-penetrating mirrors of Han China, we now venture into the colder, fiercer world of the Vikings, where a different kind of technological marvel has been unearthed from the graves of warriors and chieftains. Picture a scene, a vast burial mound in Scandinavia, the final resting place of a revered Norse leader. Alongside his personal effects and offerings for the afterlife lies his most prized possession, a sword. But this is no ordinary blade, forged from a metal of astonishing purity and marked with a mysterious name. This weapon represents a puzzle that has forced historians to completely rethink the Viking Age. These are the Ulfberht Swords, and their existence is a historical anomaly that cuts as sharply today as their edges did 1,000 years ago. The first clue to their extraordinary nature is right there in the steel. When we think of Viking weaponry, we often imagine functional, well-made blades that were nonetheless prone to the limitations of their time. Early medieval European steel, known as bloomery iron, was notoriously inconsistent. It was produced in low-temperature furnaces that left behind slag, impurities, and carbon in uneven amounts. The result was a sword that could be brittle in some spots and soft in others, a weapon that might shatter or bend in the heat of a brutal battle. But the Ulfberht swords are something else entirely. Metallurgical analysis has revealed they are made from a type of steel called crucible steel. This is a radically different, far more advanced process. It involves melting iron at incredibly high temperatures, often in a sealed clay pot or crucible, which allows the impurities to separate out and the carbon to distribute evenly throughout the liquid metal. The result is a hyper-pure, homogeneous steel that is remarkably strong, flexible, and capable of holding a lethally sharp edge. This is the same quality of steel that wouldn't become common in Europe until the Industrial Revolution, nearly 800 years later. Holding an Ulfberht was like wielding a piece of the future. The second, more personal clue is the name itself, inlaid into the blade in letters of twisted steel, plus ULFBERHT+. This inscription was a brand, a mark of unparalleled quality and prestige that would have been instantly recognizable across the continent. About 170 of these blades have been found, scattered from Scandinavia to the Black Sea, always in high-status graves, underscoring that they were not just weapons but powerful status symbols, likely owned only by the wealthiest nobles and most feared warriors. The name suggests a single master smith, or more likely, a legendary workshop that operated for an astonishing 200 years, from around the year 800 to 1000. But who was Ulfberht? Was it a person, a family, a guild, or even the name of the workshop itself? The truth is, we have no idea. The name disappears from history outside of these blades, a ghost signature on the finest swords of the age. This combination of advanced material and mysterious origin sparks a fascinating historical detective story. How did the Vikings, often stereotyped as mere raiders, get their hands on such technology? The leading theory points to vast and sophisticated trade networks that connected the frozen north to the sophisticated workshops of the Islamic world. High-quality crucible steel, known as Damascus steel or Fulad, was being produced in Persia and Central Asia during this period. It is entirely plausible that Viking traders, who navigated the river systems of Russia down to the Caspian and Black Seas, were trading amber, furs, and slaves for these ingots of superior foreign steel, or perhaps even for finished blades. They may have then brought them back to their own master smiths in the Rhineland region of Germany, where many believe the Ulfberht workshop was based, who then reforged them and added the famous inscription. This wasn't a case of simple plunder. It was a complex international supply chain operating in the early medieval period. Another, more radical theory suggests the knowledge of this advanced metallurgy might have been locally developed but was then lost. Perhaps a single, genius European smith discovered the secret of creating crucible steel through experimentation, but the technique was so difficult, expensive, and dependent on rare materials that it never spread widely. The knowledge could have died with him or his lineage, especially amidst the upheavals and famines of the 14th century, when the production of Ulfberht swords mysteriously ceases. This idea of lost knowledge is a haunting one, reminding us that technological progress is not always a straight, upward line. Sometimes peaks of achievement are reached and then forgotten, waiting centuries to be rediscovered. The Ulfberht swords completely shatter the outdated image of the Dark Ages as a time of isolation and cultural stagnation. They are tangible proof of a surprisingly globalized medieval world, where a warrior in Norway could own a blade made from Persian steel, crafted by a German smith, and traded through a network that stretched across continents. They were more than just tools of war. They were symbols of immense power, wealth, and connection. To be buried with an Ulfberht was to make a final, definitive statement about one's place in the world, a statement that, centuries later, continues to tell us a story of exchange, ingenuity, and a level of sophistication we are only just beginning to appreciate. Among the glittering treasures of Tutankhamun's tomb, where golden masks and jeweled pectorals capture every eye, there exists a collection of smaller, far more enigmatic objects that have sparked a debate stretching from the halls of academia to the fringes of speculative history. These are the so-called bird-shaped artifacts, and they are anything but simple children's toys, carved from sycamore wood and often gilded with thin layers of precious gold. These models depict a creature with a distinct fuselage-like body, a vertical tailfin that looks engineered for stability, and a pair of wings set at an angle that seems precisely calculated for lift. To a modern observer, the silhouette is uncanny. It doesn't just resemble a bird, it bears a startling, almost unsettling resemblance to a modern airplane or a sleek glider. This is not a vague, subjective impression. The proportions and angles of these objects align so closely with principles of aerodynamics that it has forced a very serious, if controversial, question. Were the ancient Egyptians merely depicting the natural world, or were they modeling a form of technology that we have never credited them with? The immediate and most widely accepted scholarly explanation places these objects firmly within the rich tapestry of Egyptian religious symbolism. The bird was a potent icon in their cosmology, representing the human ba or soul, the part of a person's spirit that could travel freely after death, moving between the earthly realm and the afterlife. It is entirely plausible that these artifacts were symbolic vessels for the soul, placed in the tomb to aid the pharaoh's spiritual journey. They could also be representations of specific sacred birds, like the falcon associated with the god Horus, a symbol of divine kingship and protection. In this view, the wings are just stylized artistic renditions, and any resemblance to aircraft is a classic case of pareidolia, our modern brain seeing familiar shapes in ancient abstract art, a psychological phenomenon like seeing faces in cloud. For most Egyptologists, this is the beginning and the end of the story, a fascinating but closed case of ritual iconography. Yet the plot thickens considerably when you consider the sheer precision of the design. The specific model that causes the most stir is not some crude, ambiguous carving. It features a perfectly straight, aerodynamically sound fuselage. The wings are not simply flat planes. They are carefully angled dihedrally, meaning they tilt slightly upward from the body, a design feature used in modern aircraft to provide inherent lateral stability. The tail is not a simple rudder. It is a distinct vertical stabilizer, exactly like the empennage on an airplane, designed to prevent unwanted side-to-side motion. This goes far beyond a casual resemblance to a bird in flight. Birds' wings are not rigidly fixed at such precise angles, and their tails are not separate, fin-like structures. This object looks less like a living creature and more like an engineered model of one. This has led a minority of researchers and engineers to propose a far more radical theory, that these objects are evidence of ancient observational science so advanced it borders on technology. The ancient Egyptians were master observers of nature. Could they have studied the flight patterns of certain birds, like the fan-tailed raven or the African swallow, and abstracted the core principles of aerodynamics, lift, drag, stability, into a physical form? Perhaps these were not toys or simple-souled birds, but the world's first wind tunnel models, conceptual tools used to understand and perhaps even experiment with the idea of flight itself. This doesn't necessarily mean the Egyptians were building full-scale gliders. The leap from a hand-sized wooden model to a manned aircraft is monumental and requires materials and engineering far beyond what was available at the time. However, it does open the door to a fascinating middle ground. Could these objects have had a ritual purpose that was deeply connected to this observed principle of flight? Imagine a ceremony where a priest would ceremonially launch one of these models. If it soared gracefully through the air of the tomb or temple, it could have been interpreted as a powerful omen, a sign that the pharaoh's soul would successfully take flight and ascend to the heavens to join the gods. In this scenario, the object's effectiveness in its ritual role was directly tied to its aerodynamic performance. A crudely carved block of wood would simply fall to the ground, a bad omen. But a carefully crafted, aerodynamically stable model would glide, fulfilling its sacred purpose. This would make the artisan who created it not just a sculptor, but an unknowing aeronautical engineer, refining his design through trial and error until it worked, without necessarily understanding the physics behind why it worked. The true mystery of these Egyptian artifacts lies in this blurring of boundaries. They force us to abandon our modern categories of ritual object and technological prototype as separate, mutually exclusive things. For the ancient Egyptians, the spiritual and the practical were woven into a single, coherent worldview. Understanding the flight of a bird could be both a scientific observation and a theological insight into the journey of the soul. Crafting an object that could glide might serve both a ceremonial function and satisfy a deep, human curiosity about the principles of the natural world. These silent wooden figures are a powerful reminder that innovation isn't always driven by the goal of building machines. Sometimes it's driven by the desire to understand the universe and humanity's place within it. They represent a brilliant convergence of careful observation, skilled craftsmanship, and profound spiritual belief, leaving us to wonder if we have been too quick to separate the sacred from the scientific in our interpretation of the ancient world. Moving from the soulful flight of Egyptian bird models, we encounter an object that is pure, geometric perfection, a mystery not from a lost culture, but from one of history's most meticulously recorded empires. Scattered across the vast expanse of what was once the Roman world, from the damp frontiers of Britain to the sun-baked outposts of Hungary, archaeologists keep unearthing these baffling bronze objects. They are the Roman dodecahedra, and they are a classic example of an ancient puzzle hiding in plain sight. Each one is a hollow, 12-sided form, a perfect pentagon on every face, and at each corner where the points meet, a small, spherical knob protrudes. They range in size from a mere handful to something you could barely cup in two hands, and they are crafted with a precision that speaks of skilled metalworking. But here is the central, maddening mystery. In the entire vast library of Roman literature, art, and correspondence that has survived, there is not a single written word, not one drawing or description that mentions what these objects were for. They are a complete and total enigma, a silent question mark left behind by a people who love to document everything. The lack of any obvious practical use only deepens the intrigue. Unlike Roman tools, which show clear signs of wear from repetitive motion, or weapons battered from combat, these dodecahedra are almost always found in pristine condition. There are no scratches from being rattled around in a tool bag, no worn edges from being used to measure or calculate, no residue from any substance they might have held. This conspicuous absence of wear and tear is a major clue, strongly suggesting that whatever their purpose, it was not for rough, daily manual labor. They were not common implements. Their discovery in contexts associated with wealth coin hoards and the graves of high-status individuals points to them being valued possessions, items of importance that someone of means wanted to take with them into the afterlife. This immediately elevates them above the realm of simple gadgetry and into the sphere of something more significant, perhaps something personal, spiritual, or symbolic. This vacuum of information has naturally given rise to a spectacular array of theories, each attempting to solve the puzzle. One of the most persistent ideas is that they were sophisticated measuring devices. Some theorists propose they were used by the Roman army as rangefinders for their formidable artillery, like ballistae. The idea is that a soldier could peer through the different-sized holes on each face to calculate the distance to a target. Others suggest they were used for agricultural planning, perhaps to determine the optimal sowing time for winter grain by measuring the angle of sunlight. The problem with these practical theories is that no two dodecahedra are exactly alike. The holes on the faces vary in size from one object to the next, and they are not standardized. If they were precision instruments for the most disciplined army in history, you would expect a rigid uniformity which they simply do not possess. Another charming, though unlikely, theory casts them as tools for a domestic craft, knitting. The notion is that the knobs could be used to weave fingers for gloves, creating a seamless tube. While Roman-era gloves have been found, there is no evidence linking them to these objects, and the varying sizes of the dodecahedra would produce gloves of wildly different dimensions, making the theory difficult to support. The most compelling explanations, however, move away from the purely practical and into the realms of the abstract and the sacred. The dodecahedron held a special place in Greek and Roman philosophy. Plato himself linked the 12-faced shape to the ether, the fifth element that he believed the heavens were made of. To the Romans, who inherited so much Greek thought, an object of this shape could have been a powerful symbol of the cosmos, a tangible representation of order, geometry, and the divine structure of the universe. It is easy to imagine one being used in spiritual or astrological practices. A priest or a fortune teller might have used it for divination, perhaps by throwing it like a dice and interpreting which face landed upward, each pentagon inscribed with a different symbol or god. Alternatively, it could have been a prized teaching tool for a philosopher, a physical model to explain complex ideas about mathematics and the nature of reality to his students. It might have even been a badge of membership for a specific cult or a secret society, a token that identified the bearer as someone initiated into certain mysteries. Their presence in graves would make perfect sense in this context. A symbol of knowledge, faith, or cosmic understanding was a fitting companion for the journey to the next world. The Roman dodecahedron stands as a powerful testament to the fact that some of the greatest mysteries aren't found in the ruins of forgotten cultures, but at the very heart of those we know best. It reminds us that even for a society as documented, logical, and engineering-driven as Rome, there was still room for mystery, symbolism, and a profound fascination with the hidden geometry of the universe. While the Roman dodecahedron represents a geometric mystery from a well-documented empire, our next discovery takes us back to the very dawn of civilization itself, to a time when writing was first being invented, and the line between practical record-keeping and magical incantation was yet to be drawn. In the legendary royal cemetery of Ur, the ancient Sumerian city in what is now Iraq, archaeologists made a discovery that is both wonderfully simple and profoundly baffling. Scattered throughout the lavish tombs of kings and queens, buried alongside golden helmets, intricate lyres, and evidence of vast wealth, were thousands of small, unassuming clay cones. Each one is only a few inches long, shaped roughly like a child's spinning top or a blunt pencil, and many are meticulously inscribed with the world's earliest known writing, cuneiform. They are not made of precious materials, they are simple baked clay. They are not unique artworks, they are mass-produced, found in staggering quantities. And this is precisely what makes them so mysterious. In a tomb filled with items of obvious and immense value, why were these humble, repetitive objects considered so essential for the journey into the afterlife? Their very presence among the elite dead forces us to confront a fundamental question about the early human mind. What did these people believe they were doing? The most straightforward and logical theory positions these cones as the ancestors of the modern spreadsheet, primitive tools of accounting and administration. The Sumerians are credited with inventing writing not for poetry or history, but for bureaucracy. Their great cities ran on complex economies, tracking distributions of grain, livestock, and goods. It is entirely plausible that these cones were a sophisticated system of tokens, each shape and inscription representing a specific quantity or type of commodity. A cone with a certain mark might equal 1 bushel of barley, while another might signify a single sheep. They could have been used to keep track of debts, taxes, or temple offerings, physically representing an abstract transaction. Finding them in a royal tomb would then make perfect sense from an administrative perspective. A king would need a full accounting of his wealth and obligations even in the afterlife to maintain his status and authority among the gods. He was, in effect, taking his filing cabinet with him. This theory paints a picture of the Sumerians as intensely practical, their spirituality deeply intertwined with the mundane mechanics of running a state. However, the alternative theory is far more evocative and speaks to a completely different dimension of ancient thought. What if these cones were not practical records, but powerful ritual objects? Their pointed shape is suggestive. They could have been intended to be thrust into the ground or into a soft material, like clay or mortar. Some scholars propose they were part of an ancient form of sympathetic magic or protective ritual. Imagine a ceremony where a priest, or perhaps the king himself, would inscribe a cone with a prayer or a protective symbol and then embed it into the wall of a temple or a palace, literally building the magic into the very foundations of the structure. Each cone would then act as a permanent spiritual guardian, a ward against evil spirits or misfortune. In this context, placing hundreds of these enchanted objects in a tomb would be the ultimate act of spiritual security, creating a fortified, sacred space to protect the vulnerable soul of the deceased on its perilous journey to the underworld. The inscriptions might not say "one sheep," but rather a powerful phrase like "May the demon lamb Ashtu be kept at bay," or "A blessing for the king in the land of the dead." This theory is supported by the later practices of Mesopotamian cultures, who did indeed use clay tablets and figurines inscribed with protective spells and buried them in the foundations of buildings for precisely this purpose. The tomb cones could be the early, proto-version of this well-documented tradition. This transforms them from simple accounting tools into potent talismans, each one a frozen moment of prayer and intention. The repetitive nature of the objects also supports this idea. In magic and ritual, repetition is not redundancy, it is power. Repeating a prayer 1,000 times or creating 1,000 identical protective charms amplifies the effect, creating a cumulative wall of spiritual force. A king would not be buried with just one guardian, he would be buried with an army of them. The true enigma of the Sumerian cones lies in this duality. They exist at the blurry intersection of the world's first data processing system and its first attempt to codify and control the unseen forces of the universe through written symbols. They represent a moment in human history where marking a piece of clay with a symbol was an act of both immense practical power and profound mystical significance. The same mark that could ensure a fair distribution of grain could also, in a different context, bind a demon or bless a soul. This is the humbling lesson of the cones. We look at them with our modern, compartmentalized minds and try to force them into a single category, either economic or religious. But for the Sumerians, these were likely not separate categories at all. Managing the kingdom's wealth was a divine duty, and invoking the gods was a necessary part of ensuring the kingdom's prosperity. The simplest artifact, a lump of inscribed clay, becomes a window into a world where every action, from counting sheep to burying a king, was part of a single, seamless tapestry of meaning that connected the earthly to the divine. Their mystery endures because we have lost the cultural key that would tell us how to read them, leaving us with a powerful reminder that our ancestors' reality was far more complex and far more magical than we often assume. Leaving behind the intricate clay tokens of Sumerian bureaucracy, we journey to the dramatic peaks of the Andes, where the Inca Empire mastered stone in ways that continue to defy explanation. Here, amidst the ruins of their sacred sites and within the confines of royal tombs, archaeologists have uncovered objects of breathtaking simplicity and profound mystery, perfectly carved stone spheres. These are not rough, rounded rocks found in a riverbed. They are meticulously crafted orbs, some no larger than a baseball, others as big as a basketball, each one a testament to a geometry so precise it borders on the impossible. The sheer perfection of their form is the first clue to their enigmatic nature. In a world without standardized measuring instruments, precision lathes, or modern machining tools, how did the Inca achieve such flawless spherical symmetry? The surfaces are incredibly smooth, the curvature constant and uninterrupted. Running your hand over one, you would feel no bumps, no flat spots, no deviations from a perfect sphere. This level of craftsmanship suggests a technological sophistication that we are only just beginning to appreciate, hinting at methods and tools that have left no trace in the archaeological record. The immediate mystery lies in the how, but the deeper, more tantalizing puzzle is the why. What purpose could these heavy, perfectly formed stones have served for the Inca elite? One compelling theory connects them to the Incas' legendary prowess as stonemasons. The empire's architecture, seen in wonders like Machu Picchu and Sacsayhuaman, is famous for its massive, irregularly shaped blocks that fit together so tightly a razor blade cannot slide between them. Perhaps these spheres were not finished products, but rather precision tools used in the construction process. An engineer might have used a series of different-sized spheres as gauges or calibration instruments to test the concavities and convexities of the stone blocks as they were being shaped, ensuring a perfect fit. A sphere with its constant radius would be the ideal tool for creating and checking the smooth, rounded sockets that allowed the Inca to join multi-ton stones with such incredible precision. This theory paints a picture of the Inca as practical geniuses, applying advanced geometric principles to solve immense engineering challenges. However, the discovery of these spheres in royal tombs suggests their significance extended far beyond the practicalities of construction. Their presence among the grave goods of the elite indicates they were items of great importance, worthy of accompanying a ruler into the afterlife. This points strongly toward a ritual or astronomical function. The Inca had a deeply complex cosmology, intimately tying their existence to the movements of the celestial bodies. The sun, the moon, and the planets were not distant lights but powerful deities governing the cycles of life. In this context, a perfect stone sphere could have been a powerful symbolic representation of a celestial body. It might have been used by priests as a teaching tool to explain the motions of the heavens, or as a sacred object in ceremonies designed to honor these cosmic forces. A sphere, after all, is the shape of the world, the sun, and the moon as they appear to us. Creating a physical, earthly embodiment of that perfect celestial form could have been an act of profound spiritual significance, a way to harness and pay homage to the power of the gods. This theory finds a fascinating parallel in the famous stone spheres of Costa Rica, created by a completely different culture a continent away. While the Diqui spheres are much larger, the uncanny similarity in form and the shared mystery of their purpose suggest that the perfect sphere held a powerful, almost universal symbolic appeal for ancient civilizations. It represents wholeness, completion, and the fundamental order of the cosmos. For the Inca, a culture that saw its emperor as the direct descendant of the sun god, possessing such an object would be a potent symbol of divine right and cosmic authority. The sphere's perfection mirrored the perceived perfection of the celestial order, and by extension, the divine order of the Inca state itself. Its placement in a tomb would then be a way to ensure the departed ruler maintained that sacred connection and authority in the world to come. The manufacturing process itself is a mystery that fuels speculation about lost techniques. How does one carve a granite boulder into a perfect sphere using only stone hammers and bronze tools? The absence of any obvious tool marks on many of these spheres is baffling. Some researchers have proposed methods involving the use of sand and water for grinding over long periods, a painstaking process of abrasion that could achieve a smooth finish. Others have suggested the Inca might have developed a technique for creating precise stone molds, or used a system of guided strings and measuring cords to check their progress. There are even more speculative theories involving the use of plant-based acids to soften the stone, making it easier to work, though no evidence for this has been found. The truth is, the method remains one of the Incas' best-kept secrets. This lack of evidence speaks to a master-apprentice tradition where complex knowledge was passed down orally and through demonstration, leaving no written manuals or discarded prototypes behind. The perfect sphere, therefore, stands as a silent monument to a forgotten school of engineering, a peak of achievement that was reached through skill, patience, and a deep understanding of material and form that we can only marvel at today. Deep within the sacred cave of Arkalichori on the island of Crete, a place of worship and ritual for the ancient Minoans, a discovery was made that continues to torment and tantalize linguists and archaeologists in equal measure. It is not a glittering treasure or a monumental statue, but a ceremonial bronze axe head, remarkable not for its size or martial purpose, but for the cryptic message etched across its surface. This is the Arkalichori Axe, and it is a locked door to a lost world, a silent artifact screaming with symbols we cannot read. The cave itself was a repository of votive offerings, a place where countless weapons and objects were deliberately broken and left as gifts to the gods, making this axe a star witness to a profound and mysterious spiritual practice. Its very existence is a direct challenge to our understanding of Europe's first great civilization, a civilization that thrived in brilliant complexity and then vanished, leaving behind whispers in an undeciphered script. The axe's power as a mystery lies entirely in its inscription. The symbols carved into the bronze are not random scratches. They are carefully executed characters that bear a striking and deeply frustrating resemblance to those of Linear A, the script used by the Minoans for administrative and, we presume, religious purposes. This is what makes the axe so agonizing for researchers. We can see the writing system, we can recognize its forms, but we cannot understand its meaning. Linear itself is one of the great unsolved puzzles of archaeology. Despite finding over 1,400 clay tablets inscribed with it, no one has ever managed to crack its code. The language it represents remains utterly unknown, a linguistic ghost. The Arkalichori Axe is like a page from that same book, but cast in enduring bronze instead of fragile clay, a permanent testament to our ignorance. Each symbol is a potential word, a name of a god or a powerful prayer, but to our eyes it is merely an elegant, meaningless pattern. This central inability to read the inscription fuels a wide range of theories about the axe's true purpose. The most straightforward idea is that it was a votive offering, an incredibly valuable object sacrificed to a deity. In this scenario, the inscription could be the name of the god it was intended for, perhaps a powerful and feared deity like the Minoan, master of animals. Or it could be the name of the wealthy donor who commissioned it, a way to ensure the gods knew who to bless. Alternatively, the symbols might not be words at all, but a series of powerful religious symbols or magical sigils. Imagine a high priest inscribing the axe with sacred marks believed to channel divine power, turning a weapon of war into a conduit for spiritual force. It could have been used in ceremonies to bless warriors or to symbolically sacrifice, the concept of conflict itself, to the gods. The fact that it was found in a cave filled with other deliberately destroyed weapons strongly supports this ritual interpretation. It was never meant to be used in battle. Its purpose was entirely spiritual, its value measured in divine favor, not military utility. However, there is another, more speculative possibility that makes the axe even more fascinating. Could the inscription be evidence of a language other than the one typically written in Linear A? The Minoans were a seafaring people, the undisputed masters of the Bronze Age Mediterranean. Their vast trade networks connected them to Egypt, Anatolia, the Levant, and mainland Greece. It is entirely plausible that a foreign diplomat, a wealthy merchant, or even a captured artisan from a distant land could have offered this axe to the Minoan gods. The inscription might then be a prayer written in a completely different tongue, using the familiar Minoan script to approximate its sounds, much like an English speaker might use the Roman alphabet to write a Japanese word. This would make the axe not just a religious object, but a fossilized record of cultural exchange, a single artifact pointing to a forgotten dialogue between civilizations. The implications of solving this puzzle are staggering. Successfully deciphering the inscription on the Arkalichori Axe could be the key that finally unlocks Lyre itself. It could provide the missing context, the recognizable word or name that would give linguists the foothold they have desperately needed for over a century. Understanding Minoan writing would completely revolutionize our understanding of early European history. We could finally read their religious texts, understand their laws, learn their history in their own words, and hear the echoes of their daily lives beyond what pottery and architecture can tell us. We could learn the truth about their mysterious downfall and clarify their relationship with the Mycenaeans who later adopted their script to write an early form of Greek in what we call Linear B. The axe is more than a museum piece. It is a potential Rosetta Stone for an entire civilization, a small, silent bronze key that could open a door to a world we have only been able to imagine. Until that day comes, it remains one of history's most eloquent and frustrating silences, a beautiful reminder that the past guards its most intimate secrets closely. While we often picture the ancient Olmec as the creators of colossal stone heads, their legacy includes a far more malleable and equally mysterious innovation, the rubber ball. Discovered in the royal burial sites of this foundational Mesoamerican culture, these objects represent one of humanity's earliest known forays into material science. But to simply call them sporting equipment is to miss the deeper, more enigmatic story they tell. These weren't the bouncy toys of a child. They were sophisticated products of a complex chemical process, often found in contexts that suggest their role was as much about ritual as it was about recreation. The very existence of these solid rubber spheres forces us to reconsider the Olmec not just as artists and rulers, but as ingenious chemists and spiritual pioneers whose understanding of the natural world was far more advanced than we might assume. The first layer of this mystery is the material itself. The Olmec, flourishing over 3,000 years ago, unlocked the secret of rubber without any knowledge of modern polymer chemistry. Their raw material was the milky white latex harvested from the Castilla elastica tree, a substance that is naturally sticky and fragile when it dries. In its raw state, it's useless for making a durable ball. But the Olmec made a brilliant, almost alchemical discovery. They found that by mixing this fresh latex with the juice from the morning glory vine, specifically from the Ipomoea alba species, and then heating the mixture, they could completely transform its properties. The sulfur-like compounds in the vine juice would vulcanize the latex, a process that creates strong cross-links between the polymer chains. This chemical reaction, not formally rediscovered until the 19th century by Charles Goodyear, turns the weak liquid into a strong, elastic, and remarkably bouncy solid. This was no accidental find. It was a deliberate, repeatable technological process. The ability to consistently produce this material implies a deep, observational knowledge of local botany and a systematic understanding of how to manipulate substances through heating and mixing. They were, in effect, the world's first polymer scientists, operating out of jungle laboratories millennia ago. Now, we know the Mesoamerican ball game was a central part of life and death for later cultures like the Maya and the Aztec, and it's logical to assume the Olmec played a precursor to this famous sport. The game, often portrayed as a brutal ritual with life or death stakes, involved propelling a heavy solid rubber ball through a stone ring using only hips, knees, and elbows. Finding these balls in tombs certainly supports the idea that the game had ritual significance for the Olmec elite as well. A powerful ruler might be buried with his ball to signify his status, his prowess, or perhaps to equip him for a symbolic game in the afterlife. However, many of the rubber balls found in these sacred contexts don't quite fit the profile of simple athletic gear. Some are curiously small, far too petite for the vigorous, full-body sport we envision. Others are found not alone, but in sets with strange, polished stone artifacts, yoke-shaped objects, carved handstones, and curious hatches whose purpose remains debated. This pairing suggests a function that goes beyond the court. This is where the mystery truly deepens. What if these rubber balls were never meant to be thrown or hit? Some archaeologists propose they held a primarily ritualistic purpose. Their incredible bounciness, a property unseen in any other material at the time, could have been interpreted as a form of magic or a manifestation of life force. In a ceremony, a shaman might bounce a ball to symbolize the journey of the sun across the sky, its descent and rebound mirroring the celestial body's daily death and rebirth. The ball's roundness could represent the sun itself, or the moon, or the cyclical nature of time and the cosmos. In this light, a ball buried with a king becomes a powerful talisman, a guarantee of cyclical renewal and rebirth for his soul. Other theories suggest they were used as ceremonial offerings themselves. The act of vulcanizing rubber with morning glory juice, a plant known for its psychoactive properties in other species, might have been seen as a sacred act of transformation, creating an object imbued with spiritual power that was then offered to the gods or interred to sanctify a tomb. The most intriguing possibility is that these rubber spheres served as conceptual models or teaching tools. Their perfect, consistent shape, achieved through a controlled chemical process, could have been a physical representation of an abstract idea: perfection, unity, or the celestial orb. An Olmec priest-philosopher might have used one to explain cosmological concepts to initiates, holding in his hand a man-made object that mirrored the perfection of the heavens. This transforms the ball from a ritual object into a symbol of intellectual achievement, a testament to a culture that sought to understand and replicate the order of the universe through craft and science. The Olmec rubber ball, therefore, stands at a fascinating crossroads. It is simultaneously a marvel of early chemical engineering, a potential piece of sporting equipment, a sacred ritual object, and a philosophical symbol. It defies any single, simple classification because for the Olmec, these categories were likely not separate. The science of transforming latex was itself a spiritual act, and the resulting object could serve multiple layers of purpose in their world. It is a humble sphere of vulcanized sap that contains a universe of meaning, reminding us that innovation and belief were deeply, inextricably intertwined in the ancient mind. Leaving behind the rubber spheres of the Olmec, we now travel to the heart of ancient Italy, where a civilization both deeply influential and profoundly mysterious left behind one of the most peculiar and specific artifacts ever discovered. Imagine a priest robed in white standing before a sacrificial altar. A sheep has been offered to the gods, and its entrails are being carefully examined not for disease but for divine messages. In his hands he holds not a scroll or a weapon, but a detailed, life-sized model of the very organ he is scrutinizing. This is the world of the Etruscans, and the bronze liver of Piacenza is our most direct and yet still cryptic window into it. This isn't an abstract sculpture or a piece of jewelry. It is a precise, working model of a sheep's liver, cast in bronze and covered in a labyrinth of inscriptions that map out the entire Etruscan cosmos. It is a theological diagram, a priest's manual, and a cosmic map, all fused into one bewildering object that demonstrates just how sophisticated and complex this precursor to Roman civilization truly was. The practice this object represents, known as haruspice or hepatoscopy, was central to Etruscan religious life. The Etruscans believed that the gods communicated their will through signs in the natural world, and there was no more important medium than the liver of a sacrificed animal. They saw this organ as a microcosm of the universe itself, a mirror reflecting the divine plan. A flaw, a spot, or an unusual shape in a specific zone of the liver could be read as a message, a warning of impending doom, a sign of favor, or an answer to a critical question of state. The liver of Piacenza is essentially a cheat sheet for this incredibly complex art of divination. It is divided into dozens of precisely marked compartments, each labeled with the name of a different Etruscan deity. The outer rim is divided into 16 sections, corresponding to the 16 regions of the Etruscan sky, while the central surface is partitioned into areas for the major gods like Tinia, the sky god equivalent to Zeus or Jupiter, and Uni, his queenly consort. A priest or haruspex would have used this model as a reference guide, comparing the actual liver from a sacrifice to this ideal bronze template to interpret the divine signals. This is where the object transforms from a simple tool into a profound philosophical statement. The Etruscans didn't just believe the gods sent random signs. They believed the universe was a perfectly ordered system, and that this order could be decoded through meticulous observation and a rigid, codified system of interpretation. The liver of Piacenza is a physical manifestation of that belief in a structured, knowable cosmos. It represents a world where nothing happened by chance. Every event, from a harvest failure to a military victory, was a direct consequence of divine will, and that will could be literally read in the entrails of an animal if you possessed the correct key. This wasn't primitive superstition. It was a highly developed and logical system of thought, a science of the sacred that required years of training to master. The existence of such a detailed, permanent model suggests this knowledge was formalized, taught in schools for priests, and considered essential for guiding the fate of the city-state. Yet for all its intricate detail, the liver of Piacenza remains a deeply frustrating puzzle. The inscriptions are written in the Etruscan language, a tongue that, despite our ability to read its letters, we still understand only partially. We can sound out the names of the gods in each compartment: Tinia, Uni, Minerva, but the finer meanings, the specific nuances of what a mark in Tinia's section versus one in Minerva's section would have signified, are largely lost to us. It's like having a detailed map of a city where we can read the street names but have no idea what any of the buildings are for. We lack the accompanying commentary, the oral tradition that would have given life to these etched words. We know the system was incredibly important. The Romans were so impressed by it that they adopted the practice of haruspicy themselves, consulting Etruscan priests before every major battle or political decision. But we are forever on the outside, looking in at a system we can describe but never fully operate. This is the ultimate lesson of the liver of Piacenza. It is a stark reminder that an artifact, no matter how complete and well preserved, is ultimately meaningless without its cultural context. The bronze liver itself is not the mystery. The mystery is the living, breathing world of belief that it served. We can hold the key in our hands, but the lock it fits has vanished into time. The object stands as a monument to a vast and sophisticated intellectual tradition that shaped the course of Western civilization through its influence on Rome, yet whose inner workings are now almost entirely silent. It challenges our modern tendency to separate science from religion. For the Etruscans, reading the liver was both a spiritual act and a rigorous science of observation, a way to bring order to a seemingly chaotic world by seeking the patterns of the gods in the most intimate parts of nature. While the Etruscan liver provided a map to the divine through animal anatomy, our next discovery illuminates a different kind of ancient genius, one that merges breathtaking artistry with ingenious, practical engineering to create an object of everyday use that feels centuries ahead of its time. Unearthed from the tomb of a Han Dynasty aristocrat, the the Changxin Palace lamp is not merely a source of light. It is a masterclass in design, a silent poem cast in bronze that challenges our every assumption about the simplicity of ancient technology. At first glance, it appears as a graceful kneeling maid, her long sleeves forming the robes of a court attendant, her expression one of serene deference. But this beautiful sculpture is in fact a highly sophisticated machine. Her hollow body is not solid metal. It is a complex network of hidden chambers and cleverly designed channels that served a revolutionary purpose: to completely eliminate the one unavoidable nuisance of oil-burning lamps, smoke. The genius of the lamp's operation is a wonder of ancient ergonomics and environmental awareness. The maid's right sleeve acts as a chimney, cunningly designed to draw the smoke produced by the burning whale oil or animal fat upwards from the dish-shaped lamp she holds. Instead of being released into the room, this smoke would travel through her hollow arm into her body and eventually settle as soot in a pool of water stored in her base. This simple yet brilliant system meant the air in the tomb, or in the palace chamber it was originally used in, remained perfectly clean, free of the eye-irritating, lung-choking smoke that would have filled rooms illuminated by simpler lamps. But the innovation doesn't stop there. The lamp's central panel, which holds the wick, could be rotated to adjust the size of the opening, effectively acting as a 2,000-year-old dimmer switch, allowing the user to control the brightness of the flame and, by extension, conserve precious fuel. Furthermore, the entire shade, which depicts the maid's flowing sleeve, could be swiveled to direct the light precisely where it was needed, much like a modern adjustable desk lamp. This level of thoughtful, user-centric design is what makes the Changxin Palace lamp so profoundly mystifying. Why invest such incredible skill and resources into a simple lamp? The obvious answer is that it was the ultimate status symbol. In the hierarchical world of the Han court, owning such a technologically advanced and exquisitely crafted object would have been a powerful declaration of wealth, refinement, and access to the emperor's favor. It was functional art, a conversation piece that demonstrated the owner's sophisticated taste and their command over the finest craftsmen in the empire. However, its presence in a tomb suggests a significance that transcends mere luxury. It was clearly an item important enough to accompany its owner into the afterlife, implying it may have held a deeper, ritualistic purpose. Light in many ancient cultures was synonymous with wisdom, spiritual purity, and the banishment of evil spirits. A lamp that could produce a pure, smokeless flame could have been seen as a potent talisman, its clean light symbolizing the purity of the soul it was meant to guide and protect in the darkness of the underworld. It represents the seamless Han Dynasty blend of the three great treasures: art, science, and philosophy, all embodied in a single, stunning object. The lamp's sheer sophistication inevitably leads to larger, more speculative questions about the nature of innovation in the ancient world. Was this a singular, brilliant invention, or was it part of a broader tradition of advanced technical design that has been lost to us? The completeness and perfection of the Changxin lamp suggest it was not a first attempt, but rather the pinnacle of a well-established craft. This raises the possibility that other, equally complex devices were once common, but have since been lost to corrosion, recycling, or simply never being placed in the protected environment of a sealed tomb. Could there have been technical manuals or engineering schematics written on bamboo or silk that detailed the principles behind such inventions? The fact that we have no such surviving documents is a sobering reminder of how fragile the record of ancient technology truly is. Furthermore, the Han Dynasty was a time of massive imperial expansion and contact along the Silk Road. While the lamp style is quintessentially Chinese, one cannot help but wonder if the flow of ideas from other advanced cultures, perhaps from the Romans, who were masters of metalworking and hydraulic engineering, or from the Parthians with their own innovations, might have indirectly inspired or influenced this leap in design thinking. The Changxin Palace lamp, therefore, stands not just as a beautiful artifact, but as a quiet, elegant challenge to history itself. It forces us to abandon the notion of a linear, predictable progression of technology, and to instead imagine an ancient world dotted with flashes of brilliance, where the line between a humble lamp and a masterpiece of engineering was often beautifully and mysteriously blurred. From the sophisticated engineering of the Han Dynasty lamp, we now journey thousands of years back in time and thousands of miles to the north, to the misty glens and rugged coasts of Neolithic Scotland. Here, in the burial mounds and ancient settlements of a people who left no written history, we find one of Europe's most enduring and tactile mysteries, the carved stone balls. These artifacts are haunting in their simplicity and bewildering in their complexity. Each one is a sphere of stone, most about the size of a tennis ball, painstakingly carved with a series of knobs, spirals, and concentric circles of such precise symmetry that they feel almost mathematical. To hold one is to feel the ghost of a Neolithic craftsperson's intent, a clear purpose etched into every groove, yet that purpose remains utterly silent, a secret kept for over 5,000 years. The first thing that strikes you about these objects is the sheer investment of time and skill they represent. We are talking about a society that had only stone tools, yet they managed to shape some of the hardest local materials, granite, sandstone, and even quartzite, into perfect orbs. This wasn't achieved with a simple hammer and chisel. It required a deep understanding of the stone itself, a patient process of pecking, grinding, and polishing that could have taken hundreds of hours for a single ball. The patterns are not random. They are meticulously planned and executed, often featuring an identical number of knobs on opposite sides of the sphere, demonstrating a sophisticated grasp of geometry and spatial reasoning. This level of effort is our biggest clue that these were not casual doodles or idle pastimes. They were objects of immense importance, worth a significant portion of a person's life to create. The fact that so many have been found in burial mounds placed alongside the dead underscores their value. They were items worthy of accompanying a person on their most important journey, suggesting a significance that was deeply personal, spiritual, or symbolic. This absence of context has, of course, led to a spectacular spectrum of theories attempting to crack the code of their purpose. The most practical suggestions cast them as tools of some kind. One persistent idea is that they were used as weapons, perhaps attached to thongs to create a kind of bowler's or a crushing mace head. However, most of these balls show no signs of impact damage or wear that would support this violent use. Another theory proposes they were part of a primitive but effective system for moving the massive stones used in megalithic constructions. A ball placed underneath a stone slab could have acted as a roller, reducing friction and allowing a small group to maneuver incredibly heavy weights. This is a compellingly practical idea, but it doesn't explain why they would be so ornately decorated or why they would be considered valuable enough to be buried with chieftains. This leads to the more abstract and intriguing theories. Their mathematical precision has fascinated many researchers. The consistent number of knobs and the perfect symmetry have prompted suggestions that they were a form of primitive calculator or astronomical aid. A craftsman might have used the patterns to calculate angles or to understand complex geometric principles needed for building their sophisticated stone circles and tombs. They could have been used to track the seasons or lunar cycles, each knob representing a day or a significant celestial event. In this light, the stone ball becomes a portable model of the cosmos, a Neolithic computer for predicting the rhythms of nature. Another compelling idea positions them as the world's first standardized weights and measures. In a time before coined money, a system of trade based on the weight of grain or precious metals would require trusted, consistent weights. A set of these balls, each carved to a specific size and weight, could have served as the official standard for a community or a region, their unique patterns acting as a maker's mark to prevent fraud. This would certainly explain their value and why they were associated with people of high status. Yet, the most resonant theories lie in the realm of the symbolic and the social. It is highly possible that these balls had nothing to do with practical function and everything to do with human connection. They could have been objects of ceremonial power, used in rituals to affirm leadership or to seal agreements between tribes. Holding a uniquely patterned ball could have been a sign of authority, a Neolithic version of a king's scepter or a mayor's chain of office. Alternatively, they might have been intensely personal objects, perhaps used in a ritual or game that was central to the culture's identity. Imagine a ceremony where two leaders would exchange carved balls to signify an alliance, the intricate patterns serving as a unique signature of their clan. Or perhaps they were used in a game of skill, an early form of bowling or a tossing game, where the winner gained not just points but prestige. The act of creating such a perfect object could have been a rite of passage itself, a way for a young artisan to prove their mastery, patience, and dedication to their craft and their community. The ball then becomes a physical manifestation of their skill and their status, an heirloom to be cherished and eventually buried with its owner. The true power of the Scottish carved stone balls lies in this very ambiguity. They are a blank slate upon which we can project our ideas about the past, and in doing so, they hold up a mirror to our own time. We live in a world obsessed with function. We want to know what everything is for. But for the Neolithic people of Scotland, the meaning of an object might have been found not in its utility, but in its beauty, its symbolism, and the simple, profound act of its creation. These stones remind us that the drive to create art, to impose order and pattern on a chaotic world, and to make objects that embody our identity, is a fundamental part of the human experience that stretches back to our very origins. They are a silent testament to the fact that advanced skill, abstract thought, and a desire for meaning were alive and well in what we so often mistakenly call the simple societies of prehistory. Standing tall in the Qut complex in Delhi, a silent sentinel defies not only centuries but the very laws of chemistry itself. This is the legendary Iron Pillar of Delhi, a 23-foot-tall column of wrought iron that has endured over 1,600 years of scorching sun and drenching monsoon rains without succumbing to the red, flaking decay of rust. While it wasn't discovered in a sealed tomb, it shares the profound mystery of royal artifacts because its very existence is a testament to a lost technological prowess that feels almost supernatural. Forged in the 4th century during the reign of the Gupta dynasty, a golden age of Indian science and art, the pillar's pristine condition is so baffling that it has become a monument not just to a king, but to a forgotten school of metallurgical genius that we still cannot fully replicate. The pillar's most famous miracle is its stunning resistance to corrosion. In a country with a harsh, humid climate, where modern iron structures require constant painting and maintenance to fight off rust, this ancient column has stood completely exposed to the elements for millennia, its surface bearing only a thin, stable layer of patina that actually protects the metal beneath. For a long time, a popular myth suggested that this was due to the pillar's unique metallurgical composition, specifically a high phosphorus content and a low sulfur and manganese content. The theory goes that early Indian smiths, using a technique called forge welding and employing charcoal bellows, accidentally incorporated phosphorus from the fuel into the iron. This phosphorus, along with the iron and oxygen from the air, then formed a protective passive layer that acts as an invisible shield, preventing the corrosive reaction that normally destroys iron. This explanation, while compelling, is now seen as only part of the story. More recent studies point to a critical environmental factor: Delhi's surprisingly low humidity for much of the year. The pillar's initial years of exposure in a drier climate may have been crucial in allowing that initial protective film to form, a film that has now proven robust enough to withstand the wet seasons. This turns the mystery from a simple question of recipe into a far more sophisticated understanding of material science. The ancient smiths may have intuitively understood the process of creating a stable metal, not just its composition, a nuance modern industry is only now fully appreciating. But the pillar's mysteries extend far beyond its uncanny preservation. Its very purpose is a subject of intense debate, wrapped in layers of history and symbolism. The pillar itself is adorned with a 6-line Sanskrit inscription, a eulogy to a powerful king named Chandra, widely believed to be Chandragupta II of the Gupta Empire. The inscription speaks of a king who conquered the Vanga countries, modern Bengal, and crossed the 7 mouths of the river Sindhu, the Indus in victory. This has led many historians to conclude that the pillar was originally erected as a Dhvaja Stambha, or victory standard, in the ancient city of Vishnupada, likely to commemorate a monumental military success. It would have been topped by the image of the divine bird Garuda, the mount of the god Vishnu, making it not just a political statement but a religious one, connecting the king's power directly to the divine. Sometime in the 13th century, it was moved to its current location by a Muslim ruler who incorporated it into his own new complex of buildings. This journey from a Hindu victory monument to a component of Islamic architecture adds another rich layer to its story, transforming it into a palimpsest of Indian history itself. However, other theories push beyond the martial and into the celestial. Some researchers have proposed that the pillar's original location and orientation were carefully chosen for astronomical purposes. Its sheer, straight form could have served as a massive gnomon, the pointer of a sundial, its shadow tracing a path that marked the hours or even the changing seasons with incredible accuracy. Aligning such a colossal instrument would have required a sophisticated understanding of astronomy and geometry, knowledge the Gupta astronomers certainly possessed. This theory suggests the pillar was a multi-functional masterpiece, by day a tool for tracking the sun, by its very existence a permanent declaration of a king's temporal and spiritual authority. It stands as a powerful challenge to our tendency to classify ancient objects into neat, modern categories. The Iron Pillar of Delhi refuses to be just one thing. It is simultaneously a feat of materials engineering, a piece of political propaganda, a religious symbol, a potential scientific instrument, and a chronicle of cultural change. It defies classification not through an unusual form, but through the sheer depth of its layered significance and the advanced, almost alchemical knowledge required for its creation. It is a humble, rustless piece of metal that forces us to completely reimagine the technological and intellectual landscape of ancient India. Imagine an adornment so significant that it required a person to gradually stretch their earlobe over years to accommodate its size, transforming their very body into a living display of power and piety. This was the reality for the Moche elite of ancient Peru, for whom ear spools were far more than simple jewelry. Discovered in the royal tombs of these pre-Inca people, these elaborate ornaments are masterpieces of lost wax casting, often crafted from gleaming gold and inlaid with dazzling turquoise, lapis lazuli, and shell. But their true mystery isn't in their precious materials, it's in their mind-boggling complexity. Some of these spools are intricate miniature dioramas depicting scenes of warfare, ritual sacrifice, or deities in stunning detail. Others are sophisticated mechanical puzzles with moving parts, hidden compartments, or even tiny whistles that may have produced sound. They are a paradox, incredibly sturdy yet exquisitely delicate, designed to be worn yet filled with details almost too small to be seen by the naked eye. This combination of engineering, art, and spiritual symbolism makes them one of the most captivating and unclassifiable artifacts to emerge from the ancient Americas. To understand the Moche Ear Spool is to understand that in their world, there was no separation between the political and the spiritual, between the leader and the shaman. The individuals buried with these objects were not just aristocrats, they were likely seen as intermediaries between the human realm and the world of the gods. The scenes depicted on the ear spools are not random decorations. They are frozen narratives, potentially illustrating foundational myths, historical victories, or crucial rituals that affirm the ruler's divine right to lead. One famous pair from the tomb of the Lord of Supon shows a dignitary or priest being carried on a litter, a clear symbol of elevated status. Another depicts a recurring Moche deity now known as the Decapitator, or a peak, often shown in a struggle with a human figure. Wearing such a scene literally at your ears would have been a constant, powerful reminder of the cosmic order, the ever-present struggle between order and chaos, and the ruler's role in maintaining that balance through ritual and warfare. The ear spools were a wearable ideology, broadcasting a complex theological and political message to all who saw them. This leads to the most fascinating and speculative theories about their function. Could they have been more than symbolic? Their intricate construction, sometimes involving tiny tubes and chambers, has led some researchers to propose they might have functioned as primitive hearing aids or auditory enhancement devices. The idea is that the complex geometry of the spool could have funneled and amplified specific sounds, perhaps allowing a priest to better hear the whispers of the gods during a ceremony or the chants of participants in a ritual. Alternatively, the small whistles sometimes incorporated into the design could have been used to produce a high-pitched, otherworldly sound during these sacred events, adding an auditory layer to the visual spectacle. While this technological theory is difficult to prove, it underscores a vital point. For the Moche, the act of hearing might have been imbued with spiritual significance. To listen could have meant to receive divine instruction, making a device that enhanced that sense a tool of immense power. Ultimately, the Moche ear spools stand as a profound testament to a culture that expressed its deepest truths through art and adornment. Without a written language, they left us their history and their beliefs encoded in gold and turquoise. Each pair is a unique primary source, a direct message from the past that we are still learning to decipher. They challenge our modern categories, refusing to be labeled simply as art, jewelry, or tool. They were all these things at once: a crown, a sermon, and perhaps even a sacred instrument, all worn proudly in the stretched lobes of a people who understood that true power was a performance meant to be seen, heard, and felt by the entire world. Their silent, gleaming complexity is a humbling reminder that some of history's most important stories are told not in books, but in the beautiful, enigmatic objects crafted to accompany the powerful into eternity. Now, let's turn our attention to a mystery born not from complexity, but from the profound power of simplicity itself. Journey with us to the sun-drenched island of Cyprus during the Bronze Age, where archaeologists routinely uncover a specific type of artifact that is both utterly common and completely baffling. These are the cruciform figurines, and their name tells you everything and nothing about them. Cruciform simply means cross-shaped, and that's precisely what they are: small, flat, abstract figures carved from stone or molded from clay, their form reducing the human body to a stark geometric pattern, a vertical line for the torso and a horizontal bar for outstretched arms. To our modern eyes, they might resemble a simple child's drawing of a person or even a primitive cross. But to the people who made them over 3,000 years ago, they were clearly objects of immense importance, found by the dozens in tombs and settlements across the entire island. Their very ubiquity is the heart of the mystery. Why did a culture produce the same simple object in such vast quantities? And what profound meaning did they see in a shape we find so elementary? The challenge in classifying these figurines stems from their radical simplicity. Unlike a detailed statue of a god or a clearly functional tool, the cruciform figurine offers no easy clues. There are no facial expressions to interpret, no intricate clothing to analyze, no accompanying weapons or symbols that point to a specific role. They are a blank slate, and this has forced archaeologists to consider a wide spectrum of possibilities, each revealing a different facet of what daily life and belief might have been like in ancient Cyprus. The most straightforward theory is that they were toys. Their small size, simple form, and durability would make them ideal for a child's hands, perhaps as a doll or a talisman. In this reading, they are touching relics of Bronze Age childhood, a glimpse into the universal human experience of play. Yet, their frequent discovery in adult graves gives us pause. While a beloved toy might be buried with a child, it seems less likely for an adult, suggesting a significance that extended beyond the nursery. This leads to the more weighty theory that they were objects of religious veneration, idols. Their cross-like shape, though certainly not Christian in origin, could have symbolized a deity with its arms outstretched in a gesture of blessing or power. They might represent a mother goddess, a common figure in many ancient fertility cults, with the horizontal arms perhaps abstractly suggesting the act of holding a child or the bounty of the earth. Their presence in tombs would then make perfect sense as a protective charm, a miniature divine guardian placed alongside the deceased to guide and shelter their soul in the afterlife. Alternatively, they might not represent a god at all, but the person buried with them a simplified, symbolic representation of the individual, a permanent effigy to accompany their journey. Another compelling idea is that they were a form of primitive currency or a token of social connection, a standardized object whose value was agreed upon by the community and used in exchanges or to signify membership in a group. Their simple, reproducible form would be ideal for this purpose. Perhaps the most powerful lesson of the Cypriot figurines is not about finding the one right answer, but about understanding how meaning is created and lost. For the people of Bronze Age Cyprus, the meaning of this shape was likely so obvious, so deeply ingrained in their culture, that it never needed to be explained or written down. It was a shared visual language, as instantly understandable to them as a traffic light or a heart symbol is to us today. We don't need a manual to know that red means stop or a heart means love. The meaning is embedded in our cultural context. The cruciform shape held that same power for them. It could have simultaneously been a religious symbol, a protective amulet, a token of identity, and a child's toy, its meaning shifting fluidly depending on the situation, the owner, and the intention behind its use. Its power lay in its versatility and its shared understanding. This is what makes them so hauntingly enigmatic. We are looking at an object that was once overflowing with meaning for an entire civilization, and yet that meaning has evaporated into the air of centuries, leaving behind only the silent, repetitive form. They are a stark reminder of the fragile nature of knowledge and the immense challenge archaeologists face. They are not just digging up objects, they are trying to reconstruct entire worlds of thought and belief from the fragments that remain. The Cruciform figurine, in all its humble simplicity, stands as a monument to all the everyday things we take for granted: the gestures, the symbols, the inside jokes, the unspoken rules that make up a culture. It is a poignant echo of a lost conversation, a silent shape that once spoke volumes, reminding us that the greatest mysteries are sometimes hidden not in the complex and the rare, but in the simple and the common. Buried in the dark, damp earth of early medieval Saxon graves, alongside swords and brooches, lies evidence of a far more elusive and haunting kind of power. These are not weapons of war, but instruments of something far more difficult to define: the Saxon lyre-like objects. To call them simply lyres is to misunderstand them entirely. While they share the basic shape, a wooden soundbox with arms rising to support a crossbar from which strings would have been stretched, the details whisper of a purpose that goes far beyond mere entertainment. Some of these instruments feature an unusual number of strings, more than the 6 or 7 typical of the period. Others are designed with strange, enclosed resonators or baffles within their soundboxes, architectural quirks that would have dramatically altered their acoustic properties, creating a deeper, droning, or perhaps muffled sound unlike the clear notes of a bard's accompaniment. These are not the standardized tools of a professional musician plying a known trade. They are custom-built, idiosyncratic artifacts, and their presence in the graves of high-status individuals suggests their value was measured in something other than melody. The mystery of these objects is not that they existed, but that they seem to operate outside any musical tradition we can recognize from historical records or later folk practices. If they were for playing the heroic epics we associate with the era, like Beowulf, why the extra strings that would complicate familiar tunings? If they were for communal singing and celebration, why the modifications that would dampen or distort their sound, making it less suitable for leading a rousing chorus? This radical departure from the norm forces us to consider that their primary function was not musical in the way we understand it today. The construction itself hints at a sophisticated, if different, acoustic knowledge. The unusual resonators weren't mistakes. They were deliberate innovations designed to produce a very specific sonic effect. This points to a world where sound itself was a tangible force, a vibration that could be shaped and weaponized for purposes beyond entertainment. This is where we cross the threshold from concert hall to sacred grove. The most compelling theory is that these were not instruments of performance, but instruments of ritual. Imagine a Saxon shaman or seer, a figure who moved between the world of the living and the spirit world. In a ceremony held under the cloak of night, the firelight dancing, they wouldn't strum a cheerful tune. Instead, they might use this modified lyre to create a sustained, hypnotic drone, a sonic bed for chants or incantations. The extra strings could have been used to create dissonant intervals or haunting harmonic layers, soundscapes designed to alter consciousness, to open the mind to visions, or to drive away malevolent spirits with a wall of overwhelming noise. The instrument becomes a technological aid for transcendence, a machine for manufacturing a spiritual state. Its power wouldn't lie in the beauty of the melody, but in the psychological and physiological impact of the sound itself, a tool as vital to the ritual as the words spoken or the herbs burned. Alongside this spiritual purpose, the lyre's role as a supreme status symbol cannot be ignored. In a society where wealth was worn and carried, a complex, finely crafted instrument inlaid with perhaps even ivory or amber was a clear declaration of power and refinement. It said that its owner was not a common laborer, but a person of importance who had the leisure to engage in or host sophisticated pursuits. This wasn't just about wealth, it was about identity. For a Saxon lord, possessing such an object might have been akin to a modern leader owning a masterpiece of art. It conveyed taste, connection to tradition, and access to the finest craftsmen. In the context of a burial, placing the lyre in the grave was a final, powerful statement. It wasn't just giving the deceased a pastime for the afterlife. It was ensuring they arrived in the hall of the gods, equipped with the very symbol of their earthly authority and their connection to the unseen forces that governed their world. The lyre was a passport to a prestigious afterlife, proof that they were a person of consequence in both the mortal and the divine realms. The silent, fragmentary remains of these instruments ultimately force us to dismantle our modern, compartmentalized view of music. For us, music is largely entertainment, a separate category from religion, politics, or science. For the Saxons, and for many ancient cultures, these spheres were inextricably linked. The same lyre could be the centerpiece of a feast, celebrating a military victory with tales of glory. It could then be used in a solemn ceremony to divine the outcome of the next battle, and it could finally be placed in a tomb as a guarantee of the chieftain's eternal status. Its function was not singular. The art of its decoration, the science of its acoustic modification, and the spiritual purpose of its sound were all threads in the same rich tapestry. These mysterious lyre-like objects are a profound reminder that in the past, an instrument was never just an instrument. It was a key, a weapon, a symbol, and a bridge to the divine, its true music lying not in the notes it played, but in the layers of meaning it held for the culture that created it. Emerging from the deep, mist-shrouded past of prehistoric Japan, the Dogu figurines present a mystery that is both profoundly ancient and strikingly, almost shockingly, modern in its appearance. Crafted by the Jomon people over 2,000 years before the rise of the samurai, these enigmatic clay figures are unlike any other artifact from the ancient world. They are not regal statues of kings or realistic depictions of animals. They are hollow, humanoid forms with a surreal, otherworldly aesthetic that feels ripped from the pages of contemporary science fiction. Their most arresting feature is their eyes, massive, almond-shaped, and often protruding from the face as if covered by a pair of elaborate goggles or sophisticated optical equipment. This is paired with an impossibly slim waist, exaggerated hips and thighs, and bodies covered in intricate, swirling patterns that look less like clothing and more like circuitry or tattooed energy lines. To encounter a dogu is to feel an immediate, visceral jolt of recognition and unfamiliarity all at once. They are at once human and utterly alien, and this compelling duality is the very heart of their enduring mystery. The most popular and sensational theory, one that has captured the public imagination for decades, is the extraterrestrial hypothesis. To a modern audience raised on a diet of science fiction, the goggle-eyed dogu bear an uncanny resemblance to the gray aliens of popular UFO lore. This has led to speculation that these figurines are not imaginative creations but literal portraits, a prehistoric record of contact with visitors from another world. Proponents of this idea argue that the Jomon people, with no concept of advanced technology or space travel, interpreted what they saw beings in helmets or suits with large, dark eyes, through the only cultural lens they had, clay sculpture. They were attempting to document a real, breathtaking encounter with the unknown. While this theory is dismissed by mainstream academia due to a complete lack of corroborating evidence, its persistence speaks to the powerful, unsettling visual impact of these objects. They trigger a deep-seated curiosity about our place in the universe and the possibility that our ancient past might be far stranger than we've been led to believe. Moving from the speculative to the spiritual, a far more grounded and widely accepted theory positions the Dogu as powerful shamanic vessels. The Jaman period was one of profound animism, a worldview where every rock, tree, and stream was alive with spirit. In such a world, the shaman was the most important person in the community, the bridge between the human and spirit realms, the healer, the weather reader, and the interpreter of dreams. The bizarre anatomy of the Dogu could be a symbolic representation of a shaman in a deep trance state. The large, staring eyes might not represent goggles, but a state of wide-eyed vision, an ability to see into the unseen world that ordinary people could not access. The tiny mouth and nose could signify the shaman's journey inward, a shutting down of the physical senses to heighten the spiritual ones. The intricate patterns covering the body could represent a state of spiritual energy, the flow of power within the shaman, or even the entoptic phenomena, the geometric shapes and patterns that are commonly seen during altered states of consciousness induced by rhythm, chanting, or psychoactive plants. In this reading, a Dogu is not a portrait of an alien, but a self-portrait of the human spirit achieving transcendence. A third compelling theory connects these figurines directly to the most fundamental human concern, fertility and the miracle of life. Many Dogu figures, particularly a style known as the Venus type, emphasize the female form with pronounced breasts, wide hips, and swollen pregnancies. Yet they do so in a way that is abstract and symbolic rather than realistic. The exaggerated features could be a form of sympathetic magic. In a world of high infant and maternal mortality, a community might create these figures as talismans, praying for a safe childbirth, a healthy child, and the continued fertility of the people and the land they depended on. The fact that many Dogu have been found deliberately broken, perhaps ritually killed after a successful birth or as part of a specific ceremony, supports this idea. Their power was in their creation and their destruction, a physical prayer offered to the mysterious forces of creation. They were a hope made tangible, a clay petition for the continuation of life itself. What makes the Dogu ultimately unclassifiable is that all these theories could be true simultaneously. For the Jaman, there likely was no separation between the shamanic trance, the health of the community, and the cycles of nature. A single Dogu could have served multiple, overlapping purposes. It was a ritual object for a specific ceremony, a teaching tool for explaining spiritual concepts, and a cherished totem of protection. Their mystery is amplified by the complete silence of their creators. The Jaman left no written records to explain their actions. Their entire worldview is communicated through the artifacts they left behind. Their stunning cord-marked pottery, their shell mounds, and these haunting, beautiful figurines. The Dogu are their most complex and personal text, a language of clay and symbol that we are still struggling to learn how to read. They stand as a powerful monument to a sophisticated, resilient culture that expressed its deepest fears, its greatest hopes, and its most profound spiritual longings not in words, but in the silent, eloquent shape of the human form, remade into a vessel for the divine. And so our journey through these 20 baffling artifacts comes to a close, but the conversation they spark is only just beginning. Each one of these objects, from the aerodynamic bird models in Tutankhamun's tomb to the silent, geometric perfection of the Roman dodecahedron, serves as a powerful reminder that the human past is not a linear, well-charted path, but a vast and often bewildering landscape. We have peered into the tombs of kings and queens, into the sacred caves of priests, and each time we have been met not with simple answers, but with deeper, more compelling questions. These artifacts are not merely curiosities. They are the pieces of a global puzzle for which we have lost the box top, each one challenging the comfortable narratives we have constructed about technological progress and cultural development. The true value of these mysteries lies not in any single definitive solution, but in the way they force us to reimagine the capabilities of our ancestors. They shatter our modern arrogance, our assumption that past societies were somehow simpler or less innovative than our own. Instead, they reveal flashes of genius that appear suddenly in the archaeological record, only to vanish again for centuries. The precision mechanics of the Antikythera Mechanism, the electrochemical potential of the Baghdad Battery, the polymer science of the Olmec rubber balls. These were not isolated miracles. They were likely the surviving fragments of much broader traditions of innovation, most of which have been lost to time, decay, or the simple fact that their most advanced creations were never buried in the protective embrace of a tomb. These objects force us to ask not just what is it, but what else did they know that we have forgotten? Perhaps the most profound lesson from all of this is the importance of embracing the unknown. The drive to classify, to label, and to neatly file everything away is a fundamental part of the scientific process. But these enigmatic finds teach us that we must also leave room for wonder. They remind us that history is not a dead, static thing to be memorized, but a living, breathing field of discovery that is constantly being rewritten. Each new technological advancement, like the CT scanners that revealed the inner workings of the Antikythera mechanism, gives us a new set of eyes with which to examine the past, offering fresh clues and overturning old assumptions. The story of humanity is far richer, far more strange, and far more interconnected than we ever could have imagined from the pages of a textbook. So we leave you with this thought. The next time you look at a modern marvel of engineering, from a smartphone to a spacecraft, consider that 1,000 years from now, an archaeologist might unearth a fragment of our world and be just as baffled as we are by a Moche Ear Spool or a crystal skull. Our own civilization will one day be an ancient mystery, its most common objects perhaps completely misunderstood. This shared sense of wonder is what connects us across the millennia. It is the spark that drives exploration, the fuel for curiosity, and the reason we keep digging, keep questioning, and keep marveling at the incredible, ingenious, and endlessly mysterious story of us. Now we want to hear from you. Which of these 20 mysteries captured your imagination the most? Do you think the Baghdad Battery was truly a source of ancient power, or were the Nazca tools used to map the stars? Share your theories and thoughts in the comments below. Let's keep the exploration going. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into history's greatest puzzles, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss our next adventure into the